We'd like to welcome you to another edition of GrokTALK, brought to you by Grok.com, New Hampshire's conservative website. We are your feared, extremist, right-wing, hard-charging, gun-toting, opinionated, outspoken, rabble-rousing, letter-writing, radio microphone-stomping conservatives and rational libertarians. So get ready for 2 hours of news and opinion you could only get from Grok.com. GrokTALk.
This week on the program, Phil Kerpen, president of American Commitment, a nationally syndicated columnist and contributor to Fox News, chairman of the Internet Freedom Coalition, and author of the book Democracy Denied, will be joining us. This is Lou Milanese, who runs the Benghazi Vigils, and he's going to be giving us an update on the vigils themselves and some news and information on Benghazi and that whole situation. And then Pete Ingemi, the tech guy, radio host, will be joining us for some conversation about the Northeast Republican Liberty Northeast Republican Leadership Conference. There was no liberty there.
No, there wasn't.
My bad.
We'll talk about that.
That was an ideological faux pas. My apologies to our many Liberty listeners. Anyway, my name's Steve McDonald. I'm here with Skip Murphy.
Yo.
Hi. Our buddy Mike is en route. He will be here shortly. He was busy creating content for GrokTALK.com, which you should be reading if you're not. And then you would know a lot of the things we're going to be talking about today.
A lot of stuff going on. Lots in the national news. A lot going on here in New Hampshire.
A lot going on. The short list is, let me see if I can even get to the short list here. The New Hampshire AG asked Walmart, Rite Aid, and Walgreens to stop selling tobacco. Governor Hassan took a dig at Scott Brown, a bit being from Massachusetts, and she's from Massachusetts. A gentleman named Parker Gilbert, a Dartmouth College student, is going on trial for rape, and the New Hampshire Attorney General took his passport away from him, but before that he voted in Hanover as if he lived here from his dorm room in that college.
And was a citizen.
As if he was a citizen, not even just an out-of-state citizen. He's not even from here. Big news, New Hampshire Democrats passed a paint tax. We'll see if we can fit that in. And then we post some photos about vote fraud, and pictures of vans from Vermont and from Massachusetts in Keene, with big signs that said, did you vote today? Shuttle running from 8 a.m. to 7 p.m., so they're basically shuttling people back and forth to the polls in these out-of-state vehicles.
I just remembered, in 2 states, the courts upheld their decision that they could require voter ID to make sure that they were citizens.
Yes, they did. I saw that.
Yes.
In Florida, Arizona, or
I think so.
I forget where it was. That was big news, too. But then last night, we got some information that sort of feeds into a theme that we've been working for a long time. Back after the tragedy at Sandy Hook, the Democrats went nuts and tried to use that as an opportunity to promote action on registration, basically, for guns by expanding background checks at the federal level. And they had bus tour was here, and they had this phony poll that said 92% of New Hampshire residents supported background checks. And I say it's a phony poll because the guy who did the poll, whose name escapes me at the moment,
Toffoli or something like that,
wouldn't
over
share
at NEC.
Yeah, wouldn't share his polling data. He wouldn't share the questions he asked. He wouldn't tell anybody how he arrived at that number. The college wouldn't defend the poll, and he's silent. So it's pretty much a scam poll, right? Now, if you go out and ask people in the gun community, most of them will say, well, we already do background checks. We're fine with that. The checks that we have now are adequate. Maybe they're even too much, but we're good with those. So you could say, did you fill out a background check and how'd you feel about it? Yeah, no big deal. You could get to 92% real easy with supporters and gun, Second Amendment supporters. No problem. So it's a total crap poll. But anyway, they ran with that, and they've been pissing it out there, spitting blah, blah, blah. 92%, 92%, 92%.
I hate the background checks. You know why? Because you cannot make one single little mistake on them, or you have to start over. Do you know how many times I've taken that form and had to redo it because I screwed up in the wrong spot?
And you have to fill it out every single time.
Yeah.
So,
there is no frequent gun buyer program.
Yeah, no. So anyway, they started attacking Senator Ayotte because she voted against the federal background check bill, which makes sense because this is something you should do at the state level if you're going to do it at all. And so I started promoting the idea that, I looked at the history, and there weren't any Democrats who were submitting these bills. They weren't running for office on it. They weren't, they were just, there was no evidence that this was something they had any interest in. So I said, well, what are you afraid of? Why don't you run on this? You know, why, if you really believe this strongly that so many people will support you, why don't you do that? So we had a couple bills this year. Shurtleff had a bill. There's one in the Senate for letting the state decide that you aren't competent to own a firearm, which is absolutely crazy. And then, of course, there's been some shenanigans in the House with regard to anti-gun legislation. And recently, House Speaker and Democrat Majority Leader Terry Norelli was trying to push through some new scam on the left, and she couldn't get, and this is intentional, 92% of her own caucus to support her. So apparently there was a little backroom brouhaha where she snapped like a twig. And what were the words?
Phrase.
What were the two words?
Livid and hold on, I've got it right here. Livid and berserk.
Okay, and she's very unhappy with her Democrat caucus, and of course, why wouldn't she be? I mean, she lives in a ruling class liberal ghetto. She has no fear of losing her seat. Even if she's not the majority leader, if she wants to run for office, she probably can do that forever, and her district isn't ever going to kick her out. But there's lots of other Democrats who actually live in places where not everybody agrees with Terry Norelli. So they have to consider, given the climate right now with Obamacare and all this other stuff and the debt, that as Democrats, they're at risk. So that might not be in their best interest to just blindly support whatever gun scheme the leadership comes up with. Now, Democrats are really good at whipping their caucus. They usually do a great job.
Explain that.
It means that they basically, literally harass and abuse them until they either get them to vote or get them to not vote. Get them to vote their way or get them to not vote at all to stop screwing the thing up. So,
yeah, a whip is an ancient tradition. It's basically in any kind of parliament, there's usually on each party a person called the whip, whose job it is to round up the votes, to herd the cats. And according to how strongly the party wishes you to adhere to the party direction, it may be a 1, 2, or 3-line whip. You'll see me occasionally joke about 9-line whips, as in cat o' nine tails. A 3-line whip basically means you're in deep trouble with the party if you don't vote the right way. Oh, I wish our GOP would do that occasionally.
Well, and this in New Hampshire, for an example, gay marriage failed in the legislature when the Democrats had the majority, but they whipped enough people in line and got enough of the opposition Democrats to not vote at all that they managed to get that to pass. So this is an example where she's already torn into them. She's flipped out. We had reports that Democrats have never seen her this angry for failing to support her next gun scheme. And I think this is fantastic because the entire point of my original push to get them to back some kind of gun restricting legislation and to stand up for what they claim are their principles and this crazy number that they came up with was because if they do actually pass something in the House, and it might get stopped in the Senate, there's no guarantee, but if they actually do pass something, they've effectively run on it, and they will lose their election because if you can advertise this properly, everybody will know that they got whipped and they voted against the people's best interests and say goodbye to your majority.
Yeah. Well, could you say they were Terry whipped?
They were Terry whipped. Actually,
see,
that remains to be seen.
I avoided the other more offensive word.
Yes, well, yes, we could say that. We could say that.
And it's all in the, when you put it in the national context, gun laws all over the nation are actually going back to the original intention of the Second Amendment, shall not be infringed.
This is a total non-win for them. I mean, you're absolutely right. Everywhere you look, states are Illinois. Of all places.
Well, they're being forced to by the Supreme Court.
Doesn't matter. It's still happening. The legislature is trying to make it happen.
California. I will tell you, one of my coworkers in California is just jumping for joy because now she's going to finally be able to carry because out in California, very hard to be able to open. You can't open carry. And the concealed carry was a May issue, and the sheriffs and the law enforcement basically said, no, you may not, which is effectively a gun ban, and the courts have said no.
So it's safe to say that Terry Norelli is on the wrong side of history?
Oh, I think so.
And wrong side of Hawaii, too, because their gun laws just got put down. They will now have to be a shall issue as well, just like here in the state of New Hampshire, the live free or die state.
That's a horrifying thought. A gun-toting Barry in the Choom gang when he goes home.
Welcome to GrokTALK.
Yeah, I wanted to chip in on something you said earlier, because you were talking about all these people that were sponsoring gun bans and why didn't they run on it. But I wanted to go a step further. And basically, Scared Shirtlift wants us to be without guns so he can be with, because he thinks he's superior. But if we could define their efforts as crazy, would he in fact not be disqualified from owning himself?
Well, he's a former U.S. Marshal, is that correct?
Correct.
He will never have to do anything to defend his right to self-defense, because he can carry a gun till he dies. Just about anywhere, right?
Under federal law, yes.
Under federal
and what
law.
if he becomes certifiably crazy, and can we suggest that perhaps he's getting close?
Oh, boy.
Given the stuff that he tries to pass, I
That's
think
what
we
I
could
meant.
make the case.
Well,
but see, that's the reason we have a problem with SB 244 in the Senate, because the people who get to decide what defines crazy are the people who will control your gun rights.
And they're the people that are predisposed to take them away.
Exactly.
Like that lunatic that they're trying to propose as Surgeon General.
Which is why
Yes.
why somebody from gun owners of New Hampshire got very upset with me when I called pro-rape Democrats, the anti-gun Democrats, pro-rape Democrats, because everywhere where you restrict gun rights, rape increases. So it's a war on women issue. Anyway, SB 244 was part of that, and some people were very unhappy with that comparison. And I'm like, I don't care, because that's what happens. If you're not paying attention. This does two things you absolutely do not want to do. One, it infringes on rights. It gives the government the power to define the conditions under which any person they don't want to have a gun won't have a gun. And then it also is something that Democrats want, which should have been rule number one. The first thing anybody in the gun community should have realized when they supported SB 244 is that Democrats like it, which means it either does something they want or gets them closer to something they want. You should immediately run away from that.
This is the problem.
Yeah, exactly. Just as I said in respect of the debt ceiling, where Boehner had to effectively recruit Democrats to vote for. In fact, it was the other way around. He passed the debt ceiling increase with nearly all Democrats and a handful of Republicans. He, in a complete inversion of things, he had to promise the Democrat leaders that he would deliver enough Republicans to pass what was supposed to be his bill. And what did we see here with the Medicaid expansion? But exactly the same thing. We put up a bill, and 100% of the Democrats vote for it, and 50% of Republicans vote against it. Do you think it's because we're giving them what they want?
Yeah, I mean, there's no doubt about it. The rogue Republicans in the New Hampshire State Senate, once again, basically they're doing the Democrats' bidding, and then they wonder why we in the grassroots go, why should we vote for you? Why should we give money to you? We can't even trust you to do the right things on the real big things. And then they get mad at us. And they, as Mitch McConnell has said, we want to crush you wherever you go or wherever you are as far as liberty and freedom type candidates.
Yeah, that worked out real well. In August of 2012, the Nome of the North specifically went on the warpath in Florida to exclude the libertarian types from the caucuses, to make their presence null and void to all intents and purposes. They were livid. And in November, the night before the election, what do we have but the Libertarians outside what should have been the grand finale of Mitt Romney's Rockstar Tour, painting on the side of the building where it was held effectively a sign that said there's not a dime's worth of difference between him and Obama.
And I think what they
And they stayed home.
The Nome of the North would be John Sununu, the Papa Smurtha Sr.
John H., who hates me for good reason.
Mike, can you go to the Google Calendar and pull up Phil Kerpen's phone number for me?
Yes, I can.
And then give that to Skip. Thanks. Sorry, I didn't want to interrupt, but I have to go into a break in a second, and I didn't want to have to do that and try to go find the number. In fact, I'll just go do that now. We're going to be right back in 60 seconds.
Oh.
Senator Jean Shaheen said, if you like your current health plan, you can keep it. That's not true, Senator. 22,000 New Hampshire citizens have been kicked off their insurance plans. Hospitals in Rochester, Concord, and Portsmouth, they aren't allowed to provide care under the exchange. Senator, you were wrong in your comments. You should apologize for your misleading remarks. I'm calling Senator Shaheen at 750-3004 and telling her I want my doctor back. You should too.
Paid for by SaberPac.org, not authorized by any candidate or candidate committee. Hi, this is Rich Gerard, host of Gerard at Large in the Morning, the Manchester area's only locally owned, locally operated, focused, and interested riveting radio show, heard live every Monday through Friday from 6 to 9 on 90.7 FM WLMW, New Hampshire Family Radio, and available 24/7 live or archived at GerardAtLarge.com. Be sure to tune in.
GrokTALK.
You see Skip pointing at stuff with his pencil. He's pointing at Mr. Larkin. The phone number to call in is 603-715-9690.
Do you think that joke is well enough established that we don't have to
Ed Larkin?
Yeah.
I just go to GraniteRock.com and put it in the search Ed Larkin. You'll find some very interesting content that I've delivered about Mr. Larkin's goings-on and his getting paid to do nothing, and we've talked about it.
The Flasher.
The Flasher.
The Flasher, exactly. So
Ed Larkin. So that's Ed Larkin.
In the middle of our table is the Flasher. And it will light up when you phone.
You guys are haters, you're mean. Well, I'm not the one who exposed myself to a woman and her daughter in the parking lot at Market Basket.
You know, isn't that really indicative of where society is going? Somebody does something bad, is judged by society as having been bad, but yet the blame is shifted to us for being haters. How many times have you seen that in all kinds of scenarios where the person is trying to deflect and blame everybody else for what he or she did?
Well, it's because he's a member of the ruling class. I'm reading Angelo Codavilla's longer version, his book version of the ruling class.
Oh, that must
I'm
be
about
cool.
halfway through. And, of course, you need to read this. It's 90-something pages long, and it's just an extension of the original 18-page article that he wrote about the ruling class. And once you read this, I mean, we already understood it because we saw the original article, and it really clarifies the relationship between the establishment Republicans, the Democrats, the lobbyists, the bureaucracy, and their little clones in your states, about why they do what they do, why they say what they say, why they contradict themselves, the hypocrisy, everything is very, very clear, because there's a completely different set of rules for the ruling class than for the rest of us. And if you read the book, it's quick, it's easy to read. You'll clearly understand this if you don't already.
And I think we did intuitively. And when I read The Ruling Class a couple of years back, I guess about 4 years back now, I was absolutely blown away. And I read the initial multi-page essay on Spectator. Not only did I think it was good, Rush Limbaugh glanced at it and spent, well, he opened with it. And he didn't shut up about it. He went through it. He spent the entire 3-hour program on the thing when he discovered it. That's how much clarity that essay brings, and the book's damn good, too.
Yeah, I read the same article, and I just sat there with my mouth open going, oh my gosh, this explains so much. We have put a few posts up on it. I referred to it a number of times in what I write about, because it is very clear, and it does show the chasm, and this, the war that's going on here in New Hampshire. It's almost it hasn't gone hot just yet, but it might. But the chasm between the grassroots and the
It explains the vote fraud. It explains the non-resident voting problem we have. Everybody else has it. States all over the nation are coming up with these. In Florida, they just had another case where a local NBC affiliate, I wrote about this on Granite Rock, a reporter did it because the state wouldn't. He went out and he found 96 people who voted who weren't even citizens in the United States. And this is just in one local metro area, and that was just a simple sampling. And we have it happening here. We have non-residents coming into the state to vote here who were registered in Massachusetts and been voting there for years. The Democrats are like, oh, it's no big deal. The New Hampshire AG is like, there's really nothing I'm going to do about it. And yet, and they justify this because, in their opinion, as the ruling class, this is what is necessary to ensure that they can continue to tell us how to live our lives.
And this is a ready-made subject, and I brought it up at a meeting, not in my own county meeting, and several people commented upon this. This is a ready-made issue for the NHGOP. Now, did you read Jennifer Horn's latest missive about voter fraud here in New Hampshire?
She wrote one.
Did you?
No.
I must have missed it.
Well, that's because it's invisible, and that's my point. There's nothing there, and you know why? And I'm going to say it because I was told not to say it. Wrong thing to do, folks. Don't tell me what not to do, because I'll just go and do it.
Missive as in MS Viv?
Yeah. as we found out, and it was part of the news, Jeb Bradley's son voted twice, illegally. And from my standpoint, I don't care whether you're an R or a D. I don't care whether you're a highly elected official or not.
And I especially don't care if Jeb Bradley goes down.
Yeah. I mean, you should throw the book at whoever does this kind of stuff, and it doesn't matter to me whether you're an R or a D. But the NHGOP will not use this as a campaign issue because I think there are a few other skeletons in the closet. Now, certainly Ed Nail of CNHT, you, Mr. Steve of Granite Rock, and I know Gerard at Large have been very big proponents of going after the voter fraud wherever it may lie. Maybe it's time just to turn the flashlight on the NHGOP and go, let's go look.
Well, this is what we do, and that's why they'd hate us and didn't invite us to their little clam bake they had. But this was a huge principal win for Bradley. He could have made this awesome. He could have said, you know what, this is wrong, and he's my son, and I love him, and I respect him, but this is wrong.
Yes.
You have to pay when you do things that are wrong. And while I'm talking about that, this is wrong. These students voting here, this is wrong. This kid from London, England, who's being on trial for rape, voting here in Hanover, is wrong. The guy from Germany is wrong. The girl from Canada, who doesn't even go to school in our state, is wrong. The guy from Boston, the girl who lives in Ludlow, Mass., who's been voting there since 2008, shouldn't come here in 2012 and vote and go back home. These are wrong. They could have made this case, and they ran away from it. Just like Medicaid expansion. Same thing.
Let's fix their residency problem. When they come here, we lock them up so they don't go back home.
No, you're absolutely right. But it goes back to the ruling class.
Mm-hmm, exactly.
And it's like, we want to be in charge because we know better.
We have to be, and this is how we're going to do it.
Sorry, I can't burst into song because I sing too badly. However, when I think of the Republicans trying to be Democrats light, I'm thinking Jungle Book. I want to be like you.
Oh, yeah.
Monkey business in Washington.
Yeah, well, it's the ruling class. The New Hampshire AG is part of the ruling class.
There
the
you go.
Part
Another
of the
bumper.
Class. Another bumper. I better write that down because I'll forget.
No,
Jungle Book. Jungle Book.
But, Jeb Bradley, I hate to, as a conservative who happens to be a Republican, the whole idea...
I'm the king of the jungle, boy.
Oh, gosh, here he goes.
No. Anyway,
it
is
proves...
that Louis Armstrong in Orange Face?
Yes. Orange Face. All right. Somebody's going to pick that up.
But, here we go again. They prove that they are the least lackeys of the welfare state. They have proven that they are the junior partners of the Democrat Party. And they get wildly upset at us when we say it.
They want to be part of the ruling class.
Even
if they are the B-side of the Democrats' hit single, We Run Your Whole Life.
And they are indeed a bunch of donkeys' backsides. But that's exactly the point. I mean, it's been written and said many times, many places. They care more about the perks, the chairmanships, especially in the Senate when they can get them, and the ability to be able to dole out favors and mold things back in their home state than they do about serving the people in their home state. We send them there to cut government, but if government was comprised of angels, no rules would be necessary. Well, they're not, and they don't even pay attention to the rules, and we really have to slap them.
Yeah, so as we saw here in New Hampshire once again with the ill name, and whoever came up with this idea, Paint Stewardship Program. I mean, it's like, okay, it's the Holy Grail, a can of paint in your hand, and we're going to...
Apparently this is a huge problem. You know what we do at our dump? I asked them, I said, what do you do about paint? They said, if it's empty, you can just throw the can in metal scrap. They said, if it's not, you open it up and let it dry out, and once it's hard, you can just toss it in the trash because it's no longer toxic. It's just...
Yeah. Well, not only that, but as much as I hate to say it, folks, but a lot of the regional planning commissions that we rail against quite often, they're the ones who are in charge of what we call hazardous day pickup. Where in my town... They have this long line, and they've got all the right people. It comes out of my property taxes. I'm okay. That's not a bad thing. You just drive to the local town hall. You drop your stuff after you tell them what it is. The guys in the white Tyvek suits and the face masks and the whole bit come over with the gloves. They pick the stuff up out of your car, and they put it where they're supposed to, and you say, thank you very much, and you drive off. Easy peasy. And now... what was it in the law?
They would create basically
one pickup point for every 30,000 people to be no more than 19 miles away. Yeah, like I want to drive 19 miles over frost heave roads just to be able to drop an open pail of or container of paint because I can't find the lid. Yeah, that ain't happening. I'll drive a mile. Well, I shouldn't say I would, but I am betcha a lot of people are going to go, I'm just going to take the thing to the closest woods and whip it out there.
It creates a bureaucratic mechanism we don't need.
No.
And then funds it with this tax.
Yeah, and what I point, and you and I have written several posts now about this thing, and I wrote last night, we see another denigration of what used to be civil society. Well, they're going to make a permanent non-profit organization to deal with this because they know that we're going to wail on them if they say, well, we're just going to make government larger for imposing this top-down control on everybody for paint disposal. We'll just make it a non-profit, so it's not government. I'm sorry, folks, when the non-profit is totally dependent upon government laws and statutes, because DES is going to get its fingers in on this, and it's
wholly
totally
funded by fees and fines, which is just a signal right there.
Yeah, fees and fines. I'm sorry, if I have to pay an additional cost for this good or service because government has said thou shalt pay, it's a tax, and this nonprofit will be totally dependent upon its very life upon government. I'm sorry, that's just lying.
A ward of the state.
It is a ward of the state. But, I keep railing about this over and over again. De Tocqueville, back in the 1830s and 40s when he was touring America, said, the strength of America was the size of its civil society. Small government, lots of individuals, but a strong, healthy, robust civil society in where most of the interactions between citizens happen. And since the Progressive Era, we've seen that civil society morph, where charities and nonprofits become more and more dependent upon government. I know I was on the budget committee. They used to come hat in hand and say, well, we need your community support. No, what you're asking for is the support of a handful of politicians to go grab public taxpayer money. Hey, we're out of time.
We are. And those nice little pictures you put up, Steve, reminds me of those other eco weenies.
Which pictures?
Of the paint.
Oh, yes.
Rainbow Warriors. Let's call them
like
Rainbow Warriors.
I did. I looked at...
Like the Greenpeace ship.
This was very thoughtful. I looked at a lot of pictures of paint before I chose that one. You're listening to Grok Talk. My name's Steve McDonald. I'm here with Skip Murphy and Mike Rogers. Don't forget, you could call us at 603-715-9690. But next segment, we'll be talking to Phil Kerpen, president of American Commitment. We'll be right back with more Grok Talk.
This is the Coalition of New Hampshire Taxpayers. We're located at 8 North Main in Concord, New Hampshire. This is the repository for all things conservative and municipal. So if you have a problem in your town, your school, your budget committee, the right to know law, and now at the top of our list is voter fraud. You have a tip for us, some information for us, you want to join or help us out, cnht.org.
The Center for Redress of Grievances, LLC, was established officially November of 2012 for the purpose of becoming a media outlet for those individuals who believe and have documentation that they've been unjustly treated by local, state, or federal government agencies. Our mission is to document their stories and to get them out to the public. By collecting and organizing this data, the Center for Redress will be able to better show the public and our legislature that there are issues with some of our government agencies that may be widespread and need to be addressed. Although we are not a nonprofit, we do provide all of our services at no cost to our clients. All of our services may include screening interviews, documentation gathering, audio-video of court hearings, and production of Speak Up, which is our television show. We're funded exclusively through sponsorship of Speak Up and our advertisers on our website. We hope to help those individuals who, with well-documented stories, need to be heard with credibility when the other agencies and media sources turn a deaf ear to them. You can go to our website at www.centerforredress.com and check us out. Anything you would like to donate is truly appreciated, and we will put it to good use.
Hi, this is Rich Gerard, host of Gerard at Large in the Morning. You're listening to GrokTALK.
Grok TV.